My guest on this episode of the Neil Wilkins Podcast is James Hipkin. Now, James has over 40 years working in marketing and advertising at a high level. He's a very accomplished, forward-thinking marketing professional who's worked with the likes of Sprint, Apple, Wells Fargo, Nestlé, Toyota, and beyond. And here's the but, and this was the really interesting thing that made me feel we need to have a conversation, is that James is on a personal crusade to bring best practice marketing principles to small to medium-sized businesses, and particularly in the field of digital marketing. So if this sounds like it's something you need to go deep into, you've landed on the right episode of the podcast. So welcome to the show, James.
Hey, Neil, I'm really, really happy to be here. I'm looking forward to chatting, and I think there's a lot we can talk about.
I think there is, and I think we're going to have to kind of almost constrain ourselves with enthusiasm here, because we've been around the block kind of multiple times in this whole marketing thing, haven't we? So we could talk about, 100, maybe even 1,000 different marketing topics, but we're going to keep it really, really focused here. And this is about bringing best practice to small to medium-sized businesses, because I don't know about you, but I find that a lot of the evidence, a lot of the case studies, a lot of the narrative is typically focused on big business. It's the big enterprises and what those guys are doing with the big budgets. But for most of us, that's not our world, is it?
You used a key word, distracted. And one of the challenges with modern marketing is you have so many options. There's just so much stuff swirling around, and everybody is out there claiming that, their thing will lead to seven-figure success, and, just do these four things, and, you're et cetera, and it goes on and on and on. And, where we grew up in marketing, there was television, radio, print, direct mail. Basically outdoor, 4 or 5 different channels that you could look at, and not a whole lot of options inside of each one of those channels. Well, with the explosion of digital marketing, on the one hand, it's less expensive than those channels, but on the other hand, it is vastly more complicated than those channels because there are so many options. So what I try to do is draw on my experience to understand what is the underlying principle that led to success in this effort. And that distinction is really important. It's being able to separate what's my objective, what's the strategy I'm using to pursue that objective, and then what are the tactical implementations. What often happens is business owners, because they don't have that strategic foundation, they're really good at what they do, but that doesn't mean they're really good at marketing, because it's not what they do. So they don't have that strategic foundation. So if you imagine business owner is standing on the top of his building, and he has a megaphone, and he's shouting at the world at large about how awesome they are. I call this inside-out marketing. And the digital channels you use to amplify your message really doesn't matter if your message isn't resonating with your audience. And that there are so many choices that people, I'll just change. I'll move from Instagram to TikTok, or I'll move from, I'll stop doing this and I'll start doing it on LinkedIn, or they just bounce around without giving any serious thought to what is the overriding strategy. When I audit websites, when I audit digital programs, that's the piece I see missing most often: an absence of strategy.
So I guess it's interesting, isn't it? Because when you started out, and it wasn't in this arena, was it? And I think we need to kind of understand kind of your starting point here. But I guess the industry that you began in, if you had a good product, and we'll understand, we'll unpick this in a minute for the listeners, but if you have a good product, or let's say a great product, and you happen to be on stage with that megaphone, metaphorically speaking,
Mm-hmm.
you can sell albums, can't you? Oh, I've let the cat out the bag here with actually what the industry is, but I'll let you kind of describe it. But if the product's good enough, it will sell itself. But for most of us, that is not the case, is it? Because the competition's too heavy. We've got digital stuff going on. So I want to kind of almost take a few steps back here and rewind back to the beginning of James Hipkin's journey, because it wasn't kind of this scenario, was it?
No, it wasn't a traditional path at all, which has probably allowed me to bring the creativity that I've been able to the marketing programs that I've been involved with, because I don't have the formal background, the formal training. My college degree is a Bachelor of Music. And my major was composition and theory. My minor was math. Whenever I needed to raise my grade point average, I took a calculus course. I was one of those weird people. And that led me into 6 years in the rock and roll industry after I graduated. And that was a very interesting experience. It taught me a great deal. It taught me a great deal about project management, taught me a great deal about the power of people and team building. It taught me a great deal about myself, and conversations that I had with a young man at the time, named Geddy Lee, who was the bass player and lead singer with a Canadian band called Rush. And the thing about Rush that was so fascinating that he shared with me was they were vertically integrated from the get-go. Now, artists like Taylor Swift are doing this now. That's why she re-recorded all of her early albums, because she was moving towards a vertical integration where they own their own sound and lights, they own their own publishing, they own their own record company, and then they rent their equipment out to other bands when they're not using it. They sign other artists to the record company. And Geddy Lee and Rush were doing that back in the 1980s. And those conversations gave me permission and a different perspective on the world of business that maybe my music training had an application. And I've come to realize that marketing is in many ways very similar to music, in that when you define what you're doing, it's all very logical. You can put it down on a piece of paper. You can map it out, what's going to happen and the various things that are going to happen at the various times. But if you execute what's on that piece of paper literally, probably won't be successful. You have to bring an interpretation into that, which is by definition what music is. Music is written down on paper. The example I'll often use is the classic 12-bar blues. It's 12 bars, it's the same chord progression, and yet thousands and thousands of amazing songs have been built off of that same 12 bars and that same chord progression, because of the power of lateral thinking against the discipline of structure, which is in large part what marketing is. You've got structural way to go to market, but you have to interpret that laterally and creatively. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's really has informed my career. It's informed how I think about these things. It continues to inform how I think about these things. And I'm often in a situation where I'll talk in a musical context. You have to be listening all the time. You have to be aware of everything that's going on around you. You have to be aware of what everybody else is doing in order for your piece in the puzzle to blend in or stand out, whatever is appropriate in the moment, appropriately. The key fundamental challenge that marketers often have is they stop listening to their customers. And they start just shouting from rooftops about how awesome they are. And their customers are busy. You know, when when I talk about the non-icky marketing funnel, I have what I describe as the world's most boring slide. It's a white field with a big gray blob on it. And I use that to communicate the idea that from your customer's point of view, that's what's going on. They're exposed to 6,000 to 10,000 marketing messages a day. It's just noise. The only way you're going to break through that noise is when you create a message that resonates with who the customer is, what they're looking for, where they are in their journey. And those two factors, defining who your customer is, you'll hear it described as the customer avatar. Sometimes you'll hear it described as the customer persona. But the other piece of it that often gets not done is mapping the buyer's journey. Because the kinds of questions and obstacles they have when they've just become aware that they have a problem are different from when they're going into their research phase, sometimes called consideration. And then they change again when they're prospecting, when they're trying to make a decision about which product or service or brand they're going to choose. And then there's yet again when they're actually making the decision. Mapping that journey in the customer's mind, the kinds of questions and the obstacles that they overcome, suddenly brings sanity to your marketing. And that's what I call, outside in marketing. You're looking at the outside and you're following the path back into you, and then you're creating messaging that supports. May I share something that's a little controversial?
Oh, please do. We're ready for this.
Okay. And you as an experienced marketer will both smile and probably go a little wide-eyed when I say this. I want you to stop saying call to action. Right?
Okay.
Everybody has
if you
been
give me
told
something else, James.
You have to, what you need to start doing is thinking in terms of, I'm not creating a call to action, I'm creating a pathway. People like you pathways that people can elect to follow. Now, effectively, it's exactly the same thing. But the mindset is it's quite different, and that shift is very important. A call to action is a marketer shouting at a customer and telling them what to do. People don't want to be shouted at, and they don't want to be told what to do. A pathway is a marketer inviting a customer to follow down a pathway to find the information that they're looking for. When your customer chooses that people like you pathway, there are two things that happen. They've told you exactly who they are, and they've given you permission to give them more information. And that shift in mindset is really powerful. And that's a classic example of a call to action is inside out marketing. A pathway is outside in marketing.
Something really nice about the thoughtfulness. I mean, I often use the phrase mindful marketing, and you're describing it absolutely, James, in the way that you sort of convey this. It's really thoughtful. It's reflective. It's not just jumping on the latest bandwagon. It's not just doing the latest social network because everybody else is jumping in there. There's something kind of really grounded about this, and it kind of just gives the essence really to me. And when you use the analogy of music industry and kind of all of the various facets there of, these very thoughtful, very intelligent, reflective artists. I mean, Geddy, Neil and Alex, and obviously Taylor Swift that you've used there as well. These are they're doing intelligent marketing. They're doing intelligent music. They know the strategy. Business. It's intelligent business. Yeah, it absolutely is. But it's thoughtful, isn't it? It's taking the time. It's being patient.
Right.
There's a real theme and pattern here, isn't there?
Yep. Yeah. And that thoughtfulness, I mean, one of the factors that you want to look for here is you want the purchase to be the next logical step in their journey. When the consumer feels like they've made a good choice, they're going to be much more open to your further communication. And remember, a loyal customer brings revenue to a business in 5 different ways. But it doesn't happen by accident. I remember we got hired when I was executive vice president at an agency in Chicago, and we got hired by Sprint to help them with their long distance division, this was pre cell phones, right? So, and they were suffering tremendous issues with churn. We almost didn't accept the RFP because when we looked at the analysis, they were losing customers faster than they were gaining customers. They were on a path to be out of business in 18 months. We sponsored a research study with a guy who specialized in loyalty research. And I don't remember anything about the output of the research study. It was a long time ago. But I do remember one line that he said during his preamble. He said 90% of loyalty problems can be traced to a flawed sales process. And that one sentence has informed a great deal of my thinking about marketing, my thinking about customers and relationship marketing, and a lot of the things that I've done throughout my career, because it was a powerfully profound thing to say. And it just shifts your perspective from me selling crap to someone versus my providing a solution that helps someone have a better life.
It's a mix, though, isn't it? Because if I think again, going back to your music analogies here, I mean, you might have the most efficient band who can do very carbon friendly or sustainable, tours, and there's some big bands, Coldplay, for example, big sort of advocates of sustainable gigs and things like that. So there's a lot of this kind of process sort of happening at the moment in the music industry, which is really impressive in its own right. But you still have to have a good album or a good single to be able to then actually do commerce, don't you? So do you feel there's an analogy there with, okay, I've got a great sales process. I might have a really powerful website, great presence, but I've also got to do good content, and I've also got to have a great service level after the person's actually purchased the initial product. It's an end-to-end thing, surely, isn't it?
Oh yes, it's absolutely an end-to-end thing, and that's the piece that oftentimes gets missed, right? They think that their relationship with the customer ends once the customer purchases. And the reality is, when we do buyer's journey maps, the purchase point is not the end of the journey map. It's about 2/3 of the way through. Because if you think about the interest that the customer has, and I pulled a lot of this from my experience in the automotive industry. Research that I've been involved with in the automotive industry has shown very, very clearly customers are as aware of your advertising and your competitors' advertising immediately after they've made the purchase. They're as aware as they were immediately before the purchase. They're open to messaging from the brand. They're open to messaging from your business. They want to hear from you. They want to know that that they've made a good decision, that you value their business, that you value. And if you start treating them like you have a relationship with them and delivering value to them that goes beyond the functional transactional benefits of your product and service, you create a thing that I call relationship equity. And it's relationship equity is what creates a brand. There's a lot of products with names out there that are masquerading as brands. They really aren't brands because there's nothing in the relationship beyond the functional and transactional. And if all you're doing is basing your relationship with your customers on functional and transactional benefits, then next time somebody else comes along with a better, cheaper, shinier widget, well, they'll try that one because there's nothing holding them back. So that
Mm.
post-purchase time is absolutely vital. Now, obviously, different sectors and different marketplaces are going to, in consumer packaged goods, it's how you execute that is very different than it is with, say, an automotive purchase, high ticket, or in B2B. They're each, how you execute these ideas is going to be different depending on your product, your service, your category. But the principles that I'm talking about are valid, and they really, really make a difference because they help you make choices between, I'm going to do this, I'm not going to do that. I'm doing this because it's in alignment with this strategy that I'm pursuing. I'm not going to do that because it's not in alignment with the strategy. But if you don't have a strategy, how do you make that choice? Everything looks the same.
So do you think we've been, and again, I'm referring specifically to small to medium-sized businesses here. Do you think we've been playing to the wrong agenda, maybe an old kind of outdated agenda that talks about got to get more sales? A lot of people I talk to, and over the years I've seen this play out many, many times, is that a so-called successful business is one that gets loads of new customers. The constant focus is on bringing in new revenue. That sales pipeline, which, you read any marketing textbook, it's all about supporting the sales pipeline. Are we missing a trick here? Because from what you're saying, James, is that most of the value feels like it's with actually people we've already engaged with, we've already taken through the vast majority of the customer journey. And actually now, because they've bought into us, there's clearly something there that has given them a reason to come back. And again, from the music analogy, buy the next album because they like the sound of our music.
Right.
Have we been just trying to get too many new customers?
Well, it's a complicated question. It's a valid question. I remember my team, we had Bank of America as a client for a period of time. Someday I'll share the story about firing a $3 million client. But anyway, we did a bunch of data analysis for Bank of America, and we showed them that they were generating 120+% of their profitability was coming from 10% of their customers. What that basically means is they were losing a boatload of money on most of their customers because they were so fixated on sales, free checking, free this, free that, hitting sales numbers, that their concern for the quality of the customer just went out the door. And the reality is, in most sectors, the Pareto's principle applies. 80% of revenue is coming from 20% of your customers. Specific ratio is probably going to be different in your business, but the concept is valid. That 20% are likely heavy category users. They have a deep need for whatever it is that you're selling or doing. That makes them very knowledgeable, very aware, very involved in what's going on in the category. They know about your product or service, and they know about your competitors' products and services. Now, if you focus your marketing on attracting more people like them, that and your customer base has a disproportionate number of people who are these heavy users. You may have exactly the same number of customers as your competitor, but you'll have 2x the top line revenue because of these heavy category users. The return on the investment to acquire them will be better because they're staying longer. They are much more likely to buy more products and services from you. So your marketing costs are less to market to your existing customers, and they're adding revenue. They're very aware of what it is you're doing and how it works, so your customer support costs go down. They're very aware of your value proposition, so they're much more likely to pay full price. And as a loyal customer that's very happy and feels very good about the relationship they have with, they're much more likely to advocate for you and bring in other customers like them. So that's 5 different ways that a loyal, high quality customer brings revenue to your business. Which would you rather have, that person or the person who buys one product every 18 months?
So we've got so distracted, haven't we? As business owners, as marketing managers in, again, small to medium-sized firms, we're kind of almost talking the wrong story. We're talking the wrong narrative. And of course, the beauty for that size of organization who probably doesn't have the deep pockets to be able to do big research, projects, or have the time, the luxury of time to be able to absorb those into the business, is we've got digital data. So kind of almost coming full circle to where you started, James, which is just this whole idea of the value of digital. It's there, isn't it? At our fingertips, literally at the press of a button, we should be able to identify who those customers are.
Right. We can identify who those customers are, but the other thing that's going on in marketing, which is influencing this, I talked about the avatar before and the buyer's journey. When I was involved with big brands, we would hire research companies. Typical cost might run 50 grand to do that kind of study, right? Because you've got focus groups, you've got quantitative research, you've got expensive researchers who are doing analysis, and strategic people, and it's a thing. Most smaller businesses can't afford to spend that money. Even if all they do is pick up the phone and call some of their customers and start to fill in the blanks about the avatar and the journey, they're going to be a step ahead of their competitors. But what we've done and what we're doing is we're harnessing the power of machine learning to make a platform that's going to provide this kind of expertise to smaller business owners at a much more affordable cost. And I'm very excited about this because the power of understanding who your customers are and creating marketing that resonates with them at each point in their journey builds those microtransactions, builds trust, builds relationship, so that when they're purchasing from you, it's the next logical step in their journey. Being able to unleash that power as a small business owner, my goodness, it takes a lot of the noise away. Both for you as a business owner, every shiny thing's not so shiny anymore. And more importantly, for your audience, for your customers. Because suddenly they're seeing answers to their questions coming from you that support what they're thinking and support what they're trying to accomplish.
In a short sense, I guess, or in a very light sense, that might identify some fine-tuning areas. But I guess diving deeply into that could, for any particular business, mean that you're going to have to pivot, because the findings that you see mean that you've got this capability to do something, but it's not what you've been doing. And maybe that is the fundamental reason why it's not been working and you just haven't realized it. It's been shrouded by this veil of lack of information or lack of listening, and suddenly you've opened up this opportunity to pivot, to do something differently, maybe to break into a new market. This could be quite profound for a lot of people, couldn't it?
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm sure you've seen this scenario. A business owner has gotten to a certain level of success, and this is all very overwhelming. So they go out and they hire a small little boutique marketing agency, because that's what they can afford, to help them with their marketing. And the boutique marketing agency, nobody comes to work with the intention of doing a bad job. They do a really good job of taking what the client gives them and making it look better. But the client isn't a marketer. They're really good at their business, but they're not a marketer. And the boutique agency, they're really good at executing, but they're not, generally speaking, terribly strategic. Creating that strategic glue that gives the boutique marketing agency the resources that they need to execute against a strategy, that's the difference maker. That takes it from being pretty noise to being marketing that supports the buyer's journey.
That pretty noise is such an interesting sort of combination of words there, because I'm sure there are a lot of people listening and watching this thinking, yikes, that's me. That's what we do. And if they're being really brutally honest, that is what most of us do. We've got content. Right. We've got, as you say, maybe there's a boutique agency, or maybe we've got a junior marketer who happens to be the cousin of the wife of the cousin of the, the owner of the business. And they're coming in and we do some Instagram. We're marketing. Yay, great. Yeah. And actually, it's missing the whole point of what this is, which is much more fundamental reason. It's the why question, isn't it? Simon Sinek always talks about, ask that question, why? Why are you there? What is the purpose? And this is the way to uncover it, isn't it? Because it can come from within, but often it comes from outside, doesn't it? The customer will tell you your why, because it's kind of how you're conveying yourself in reality in the marketplace.
It's amazing what the customer will tell you if you actually ask them.
Yeah, absolutely. And then once you know that, does this apply right the way through the journey? I mean, is it something that somebody could identify by doing research at maybe that initial awareness phase, or is this always only going to apply with people who really know you well? So they've been a customer maybe for a few years.
All the way through the journey, because when somebody is just new into a category, something happened, right? Their fridge breaks, right? The freezer stops working. Well, I've had it for 10 years. Do I get it fixed, or do I look for a new fridge? Okay, so that's some event happened in their life that opened them up to the category. And suddenly they're seeing all this advertising and marketing for appliances in general and fridges in particular. Now, it was always there, but before it was just part of the digital noise. Something happened to raise their consciousness. You want your marketing to be there to attract them into the top of your funnel with messaging that supports the kinds of questions that they're going to have. If you do that, then they may not even know who you are, but they do know that they need information about that thing. Right? So, I mean, a classic example of this from an execution point of view is a thing you probably have heard of, Neil, called the quiz funnel, where you do a fun little entertaining quiz at the top of the funnel that attracts people because it's about the topic area that we're talking about, but it's done in a light, gentle way. But then they want to see the results. They want to see how their answers compare, so they give you their email address. Then you send them a follow-up email, thanking them, giving them their results, and, very generally explaining what it is you do and maybe providing a link. Right? Well, if they click that link and go to a landing page on your website, they're telling you their thought process has evolved and they're looking for more information. But if they go to that landing page and that landing page is sell, 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 they're gone. Because that's not where they are in their journey. They're in the consideration phase. They're trying to figure this out. They're trying to understand the modern technology that's involved in this product, and they're higher up in their thought process. If you give them that information because you recognize where they are in their journey, then they're going to, this is really cool. These are good people. And then the next time they see an ad from you, they're going to follow up on that ad. They're going to actually see the ad, and then they'll take action from the ad. And that might take them to a different landing page. And that's going to be because the ad was crafted in a way that's going to resonate with people who are in the prospecting phase, and it takes them to a landing page that does a comparison. This is, like you've seen blog posts, I'm sure, where they do reviews, and it's being sponsored by a company that sells one of the products being reviewed, but they give their product and then they give all of the competitors' product. And if they should really be honest about it and be very fair about the review, but that kind of thing builds trust. That answers the questions that people have at that point in their journey. Then you take them to, I'd like to take action on this, and that takes them to a sales page, which overcomes any further obstacles they might have, reinforces the benefits of the products, and makes it very easy for them to buy. So I've just mapped out a quick little marketing program that starts at the top and moves through the journey that the buyer's on to the conclusion, which is the next logical step in their journey, because you have the solution to their problem. They have convinced themselves that you are the best choice for them.
Yeah, I often talk about giving people reasons to buy rather than selling to them. I think you're saying exactly this, aren't you,
Yes.
James, in terms of, just kind of almost giving permission to take that next step on the pathway.
Absolutely.
Now I see where that pathway steps is so much better than call to action, because it's on their terms, isn't it, with the way you're describing it?
That's right. It's on there. Effectively, it's exactly the same thing. But the mindset shift is important, because the mindset shift is you are there to serve your customers where they are. And that's what builds, the most important time in the relationship is that first purchase. But the most important purchase is not the first purchase. It's the second purchase. Because if you can get them to buy from you twice, the chances they'll buy from you 3, 4, and 5 times is exponentially improved. And that gets into that whole best customer conversation we had about, you don't need to have all of the customers in the world. You just need to have the best customers.
And what is this thing about the 6 seconds or less? Because these are busy markets. I mean, it sounds beautiful, and I love the whole idea of these customer journeys and just going through this in a really thoughtful way. But the trouble is there's competition, isn't there? And they're clamoring and shouting. So what is this 6 seconds thing? Is that the maximum amount of time I've got to hook them in?
Well, it's the 6 ways to engage website visitors in 6 seconds or less. It's 6 mostly for the alliteration, but it does communicate that, people are very easily distracted and you don't have much time. And these ideas are specific to websites, but they apply across the website, whether it's a marketing landing page or your homepage. You need to recognize that they're on their journey and they're giving you their attention, and they're not going to give you very much of it unless you earn it. So the 6 ways, the first way actually isn't about design or copy at all. It's the 6 seconds doesn't start when the page is loaded. The 6 seconds starts when the page is asked for. So page load speed is a really important thing to be aware of. If your website's taking 3 or 4 seconds to load, you're wasting all that time. It should take a second or less to load. And page load speed is also a trust event. If your page loads really quickly, the impression that you're leaving is that you are a professional organization and you are serious. If it's taking a long time to load, then they're thinking about it. Well, I'm wondering what's going on here. Am I at the right place, etc. And that brings you to the second way, which again isn't about copy or design so much. It's, am I in the right place? People are nervous. Getting them to click a link these days is hard. So if your top of funnel marketing is all, with lighthearted and pastel colors or whatever it might be, make sure your website is the same. If people are looking for, Neil Wilkins, you're going to want to make sure that your name is prominently displayed. You can still have a logo and et cetera, but understand what people are looking for so that they can instantly see I'm in the right place. You don't want them thinking about that, because that's a waste of time, and you only have 6 seconds. Right? And then recognize where they are in their journey and give them a benefit-oriented reason to stay. That is, don't have a top of funnel message sitting in your hero section of your website. They're there because they heard about you someplace. They're there because somebody told them. I mean, a good example of this is, I often hear, particularly from professional services folks, I don't get any leads from my website. So I'll say, okay, what's the primary objective of your website? And they'll give me a litany of things that they want the website to do. And then we'll have a chat about the definition of the word primary. There can only be one, right? And they'll eventually usually come down to conversion. Okay. James is about to get controversial again. That's almost always wrong. If you follow the ideas behind the avatar and the buyer's journey map, the primary objective of a website, the primary objective of the landing page is not conversion, it's confirmation. You need to confirm that you understand the problem that they have and that you have a viable and credible solution for that problem, and then they'll convert. If you lead by buy now, you're breaking that journey. You're breaking that permission structure that you're building. So give them a benefit-oriented reason to stay, and then inspire trust. One of the things I often see, and this is another one that hopefully your listeners will go, the carousel of customer testimonials that's buried at the bottom of the homepage. It's putting 6 wonderful testimonials in a carousel that somebody has to actively scroll through and pause because they're longer than the time that the carousel is allowing, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's a waste of digital real estate. You want to get one powerful testimonial high up on the page, give them reasons to believe, inspire trust, and then make their pathway clear. Most businesses, you think about the Pareto's principle we talked about before, in that 20%, there's probably 2 or 3 subsegments that represent their audience. Create people like you pathways on the homepage, high up on the page, that call out to people, said, if this is you want to do it with a headline, you want to do it with visuals, maybe a sentence or two that teases the benefits they're going to have, and then a button that allows them to learn more if they click that button. And like I said before, when they click that button, 2 things have happened. They've told you who they are. They've given you permission to give them more information. Okay. Then the last thing, I think I got through all 5, but make the content easy to consume. Use visual hierarchy. Make sure that people know where their eye is supposed to go. Most people are right-handed. Most people scan a web page, and when I worked with Toyota, we actually paid for research, eye tracking studies. They'll go from the upper left-hand corner to the lower right-hand corner. The least eye tracked spot on a web page is the lower left-hand corner. How many of you have got your copy in the left-hand column and a call to action in the lower left-hand corner, and then a nice picture on the right-hand side? Because that's what your designer said. The designer's not thinking in terms of UX. The designer's thinking in terms of design And from a design point of view, that's perfectly valid. But if you do A/B split testing, I can almost guarantee you that if you flip that over and you put the image on the left and the words on the right, you put the call to action in the lower right-hand corner, you'll get better responses. So make the content easy to consume. Don't use long line lengths. How many web pages have you seen where you've got like the long paragraphs that are like 900, 1200 pixels wide? Newspapers are written in narrow columns for a reason. It's easier to read. Just because it's a website doesn't mean can break that rule. Use visuals to support. Another old expression from my background in the direct marketing world: pictures tell, copy sells. Pick your images to support the messaging. And as I tell you about this, you'll start seeing this. When we have the budget to do photo shoots, we will not shoot the models looking straight ahead. We'll shoot the model looking over, looking up, looking down. Because the art director knows that picture is going to be overlaid with text, and that's where the headline is going to be. And people will look where the model is looking. Right? So make the content easy to consume is the sixth way.
Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, this is thoughtful marketing. I mean, I've used the phrase mindful marketing so often, but I'm going to change it now, I think. Thanks to James. We're going to call it thoughtful marketing. I mean, the reflections there, they're so obvious when you hear them said, aren't they? And yet very few people are actually doing them. So the way you kind of succinctly pull those together almost as a mantra, really, for strong digital marketing is something everybody can do.
Right.
There must be so many other things that people, if they were to connect with you, James, can uncover within their work.
I would love to chat. I love to talk about, people ask, so why haven't you retired? I still get great passion and joy out of helping business owners create marketing that creates value for their customers and their business. And, I have the experience and the knowledge to do this. I'm a reasonably articulate guy. And so much can be overcome if you just distill things down to principles and understand the simplicity. And then you've got a whole toolbox worth of things that you can pick and choose from to execute against these ideas. But the toolbox isn't driving the show. The toolbox is just that. It's a toolbox. The old corny expression of if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. We have the opposite problem in digital marketing. You've got so many tools, you don't know which one to use. Right? Well, again, is it a nail or is it a screw? And if you start with understanding who your customer is, what they're looking for, the journey that they're on, then a lot of these choices become obvious.
Such wise words. I couldn't have said it more eloquently. James, this has been absolutely amazing as a conversation. It's just so great to hear it kind of, just confirmed. I think what a lot of us do know, but just the way that you've conveyed that has been, really, really powerful. And I think for any business owner, absolutely achievable if they spend the time and a bit more thoughtful. How can people connect with you?
The easiest way to reach me is to go to vipchatwithjames.com. That's vipchatwithjames.com. And that will take you to my calendar link, and you'll be able to book a virtual coffee, and we can chat about marketing. We can chat about websites. We can chat about customers, whatever makes sense. I'd love to hear. It's so valuable to me to hear what small businesses are struggling with, because it helps us as a business create the products and services that are going to really, really support. I try to practice what we preach. And as a result, I love talking with people and chatting with them and understanding where they're coming from and what they're struggling with.
Wonderful. James, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for your time and wisdom today.
No, it's been my pleasure completely, Neil. And hopefully your audience will, somebody once said that when I talk to them, and your comments reek of common sense. And that's what I'm striving for.
You certainly did. James, thank you.